Hi everyone, my name is Ali Burgess. I'm the executive editor of Touchstone. I'm super excited to share with you today the new What Radio interview show, Hats Off. I was lucky enough to interview Professor Kate Hartikka in the sociology department, and she had some really interesting things to say. Keep watching.
All right, so hi, I'm Kate Hartikka. I am adjunct faculty here at Stetson, former student, alumna of class of 2013. I've been an admissions recruiter. I have done a million things on this campus, and I hope to continue to. I am very much a Hatter at heart.
Super fun. I'm Ali Burgess. I'm super excited to be here today. I took your class my freshman year, so super fun to have a little reunion moment.
Yeah.
Let's get into it. What got you into sociology? What put you there?
Well, I have to say it was 2011 and I was in my junior year, and I'm a former history major, and I was taking Latin at the time with an anthropology professor here, Dr. Kimberly Flint Hamilton, and I had already taken some sociology courses, and I just had a natural, I guess, gut feeling for social justice. That was the term then, social justice, positive change, getting involved in the community to make it better for people. And, you know, she just approached me and said, hey, I really think you'd fit in well in our department. And that I took her advice and switched my major my junior year. Yeah.
Fun. Looks like you made the right choice, definitely.
Yeah, I'm very into understanding human behavior, so much so that I have done a variety of different opportunities within that expertise, but I enjoy learning how social systems and structures of our world really inhibit human growth and connection in a lot of ways. And we see those places of inequality all throughout the world at every level. And I like to understand deeper why that happens, and then get into more critical movements of making it better.
Definitely. I definitely resonate with that type of sentiment. I mean, I do philosophy, but I've always been attracted to sociology. It's interesting, just like that permanent question of why things are happening. It's really ever present, just like sitting in the back of my mind, just itching at me.
Yeah. Especially if you have an investigative mind, you like to chew on hard questions and find answers to things that are plaguing you. One of the things in sociology, you'll realize there's no such thing as an answer, just more questions. But if you have that inner drive for investigation and natural curiosity, you'll never be bored in the study of human societies and behaviors. And I really love it. Yeah.
Do you have anything uniquely that piques your interest, any type of focus that you're into right now?
Yeah, so I'm actually a gerontologist now, which is the study of aging, and I'm also a thanatologist, which is the study of death, dying, and bereavement. And so I typically focus on people's end of life, but I have done a lot of work with life course, which is, birth until passing. And I really like to see how people's lives unfold at the micro level, how individual storytelling emerges as a result of unique experiences within these larger historical social forces, and how things like the 2008, recession, COVID-19, how these big global phenomenon or nationwide phenomena really impact the individual. And I like to hear their stories of how they overcome, how they creatively find solutions, and how they work within constraints of our world. And so with aging and death and dying, a lot of that work comes from making invisible visible. So we have a lot of gender-based discrimination in the elderly community. We have a lot of racism and other forms of oppression and inequalities that continue into your elderly years. And a lot of times we see a lot of older folks who are made invisible to our society, and their plights for, awareness to their needs are unheard. And so I do a lot of that work in collecting those stories to make them heard, and especially the invisibility of the dying, especially those in nursing homes, hospitals, or hospice. They tend to be not prioritized and left to die very bluntly. And so I like to bring their stories to light so people know that they are still with us, they are still impactful, they're still significant members of our community. So
that's a lot of heavy work. I commend you for that. Definitely get that kind of existential thought very interested in
Yeah.
a lot of your work about just death, dying, and kind of those last moments. Those are always very forgotten about.
Yeah.
I'm grateful that you're doing that work. It's
Oh,
very
thank
interesting.
you. Yeah, I have been a hospice volunteer on and off for a number of years. I've held the hand of many people who have taken their last breath because their families couldn't or they didn't have families who could. I've done it with people who were homeless. I've done it with people who were poor, people who were wealthy. And death is, it unifies all of us in many ways and reminds us of our humanity. But yet we get so caught up in our own worlds that we forget that human connection. And it only becomes significant when we're dying or our own beloved people are dying. And that's not really helpful to our world. We need to bring the community back, to welcome or reinvigorate the fact that the dying and the aging and the dying are just as important as anyone else. Yeah. So, yeah.
Well, definitely appreciate your work. How are you incorporating all of this heavy, important information that you're learning not only in your professional life outside of teaching? How are you incorporating that into your teaching life?
Well, I think what's really interesting is that, this interesting sort of connection with death and dying is very much integrated even into my lineage, where my last name Hartikka has a Finnish connection to this black woodpecker, which in Finnish folklore is the representation of death. And if you see a black woodpecker, it's sometimes a bad omen of impending doom, but usually they're the carriers, the couriers of the dying to the other side, this sort of mystical other side, this afterlife. And so it's really interesting that I would get into this work, but outside of campus, I'm a psychic medium and Reiki master, and I've done this for over 10 years, the psychic medium part. Reiki master is still only a few years old, but and in that work, there's, this assumption of an afterlife. And so I bring a lot of that belief of my own, but also critical investigations of other belief systems into the classroom, where I do teach death and dying as a sociology course. In the spring, I am teaching, spring of 24, I'm teaching ghosts and cults, so conversations of the sociology of spirituality and religion, right? So spirituality and religion typically emerges as a result of questions about the afterlife. And so it's funny that my academic career is really about aging and death. And then my fun hobbies and even professional world outside of this, I have my own business, is about the afterlife. And so at Stetson here, I teach a lot about the life course, aging and death and dying, and then sociology, spirituality, religion, talking about the things that happen after we leave our mortal bodies. So we do get to have really fun conversations about, for example, our near-death experience is simple neurological firing, or is there actually spiritual things happening under the surface? So we have really fun debates and read research about it, and we read parapsychological research, and it's so cool to see what students and their backgrounds and what they grew up with really inform their thoughts, and that's so cool to me to hear their stories. So yeah, we have a lot of cool talks.
Yeah, I'd love to hear more about other courses that you've taught just in your history here.
Oh my gosh. I teach social inequalities. It's very much a conflict theory base. So if you take intro to sociology, you learn about theories that focus on inequalities in this world. And so a social inequalities class is all about, the nuts and bolts of how inequality happens and in different aspects. So like health and disability, religion and spirituality, right? Education, the family. And I enjoy that class a lot because it gets us thinking about how, not the legitimacy about whether or not inequality exists, but rather how it happens, right? We're not really having that argument. We're really having a exploration into how social structures are built to disadvantage many for the benefit of a few. And it's really interesting to hear personal anecdotes from, really important case studies too, of how people overcome things like homelessness or, even incarceration, getting back into our world after being locked up, and how that is even a barrier. And, it really brings the human connection into that class too. So we look at human suffering from inequalities and how we need to not only hear people's stories, but be able to accept their realities without judgment or criticism, and hear that, their stories being told. We don't need to challenge them. We just need to listen. I also have taught gender and society in the past. I also have specialty in feminist studies and gender studies as it relates to sociology and death and dying and aging. And then I've also taught families and intimate relations. But my main focus typically is on inequalities, aging in the life course, death and dying, and then now sociology of spirituality, religion, the ghosts and cults class, which will be very spooky, I think. But yeah, I typically teach, and I'm blessed enough, I guess, to teach in specialties that I enjoy, that I'm invigorated by, and that students can also sort of talk about the taboo that maybe you're not allowed to in a chemistry class, right? And so you get to really have that exploration into our paranormal belief systems of our social world. So very cool stuff.
I know it's definitely a little bit hard sometimes for students to get into something like that, maybe coming from they're taking this for Stetson values credit. Yeah. But it definitely challenges you. Taking your intro to sociology class my freshman year, that was a really beneficial environment for me, definitely to be in. Just hearing everything from everyone, getting to see their stories and how that interacted with their social construction of inequality. Super, super interesting.
Yeah, that was a unique class too because we were online. That was fall of 21 and we were online at the time. And what I really liked about the online structure is that you are engaging in conversation. And a lot of times I make my assignments as conversation. So you are sharing your personal stories, your lived experiences, and connecting with the, material we're learning. So you can also connect with your fellow student too. And, really learning environments, I believe in my pedagogy, should be about those connections on the human level. You're not just sticking your nose in a book and osmosis into information into the brain, but really you're engaging with it. You're connecting it with your world and your friends, your family, everything. Even your past, present, and future. You are engaging with all the things that we're learning, because why study society if we don't fully understand our place within it and how it's impacting us? So that's why we do what we do in our classes, in my classes rather, and why you did what you did in my intro class back then 2 years ago. 2 years ago, wow.
I know, right?
Yeah. And I enjoy, every semester I challenge myself to teach my intro classes a little different. And I think that sets me apart, because a lot of times with introduction to anything classes, we typically have a textbook, we have a structure, and we keep it pretty simple and streamlined. But I challenge myself every semester to make it a little bit more fun. So sometimes we do, I guess for this semester, my students have to create a board game that teaches, some topic on sociology. Sometimes they research smaller communities you might not have never heard of. I've had a class do an assignment where they had to find the smallest countries in the world and learn about this was years ago, but learn about the culture of that country. And really take that time to dig into things you otherwise wouldn't think about, because we tend to take for granted our ability to ignore the goings-on of the world in sort of our bubble of university, the bubble of America even. And I like to challenge that a little bit. And so I like to stretch the creativity a little bit when it comes to teaching intro, because we cover so much cool stuff. We cover a lot of fun things. I even once did a lecture on the sociology of dogs and cool dog, festivals all over the world and the significance of those bonds, and that was really fun. So every semester is different in my intro class. You never know what you're going to get. It's going to be a surprise.
What else is fun for you around campus? What are you entertaining yourself with outside of the classroom type setting?
Oh, well, I run Haunted Hatters. I founded Haunted Hatters partially because of my background as a psychic medium, but also because when I was teaching here the last 2 years, I would just take my students on a midnight tour of Elizabeth Hall for fun. We go across campus. One time we went to the basement of Sage, which was really spooky. It ended up, were you there for that?
I think so.
It ended up being everyone ran out of the basement in fear. We had a lot of the football team there that year. That was really fun. And there was a huge loud sound of like pressurized air.
Oh my God, yes.
Yes, and we had been communicating with a spirit, an angry spirit of all things, and that sound, we had asked the spirit, do you want us to leave? And that sound just went off, and everyone ran with a quickness out of the basement of Sage. That was really funny. We had a great time. And then as a result of that popularity, I was just, brainstorming with some students last spring of 23, thinking, should we make this an actual club? Because I see these paranormal groups, ghost hunting, paranormal research groups all over. And we have a hub of energy here in Central Florida. And we're also right by Casadega, 10 minutes away, the psychic capital of the world. And I take my students there on field trips all the time, too. And so I just thought, how do we bridge those pieces together so Stetson students who are into the sort of occult, the spooky, or the questionable, right? How do we get that conversation going? So we created a Haunted Hatters, and we now have a team of, I want to say about 5, myself and another faculty, Dr. Sarah Lingo, who just joined Stetson. And then we also have 3 students who are very big planners in the nuts and bolts of these things. And we do a mixture of academic events where we just had a faculty panel this past semester, and then, this semester, about a 2 months ago. And then we also do, of course, ghost hunting. We go to different buildings. And then coming up actually at the end of this week, we're doing a Reiki healing session for finals to relax. And then in the spring, we're having a psychic fair. We're doing astrology classes. So we're doing a lot of cool stuff so people have a safe, non-judgment space to explore what is, typically thought as taboo for a lot of these students because of their upbringing, their community. And so this is a place where you have academic and social engagement, community engagement, so they can do so. But also they're getting in spaces they never otherwise would have. Many people don't go to Elizabeth because they don't have class there. Many people don't go to Sage for the same reason. Many people have never stepped foot in Sampson, right? Or talked to various faculty or admin assistants who run these buildings. And so we're being able to engage with them and learn the history of Stetson at the same time, and also preserve the culture and history of the university, the fun, spooky history. And so we've had a lot of great conversations about here at Stetson, the significance of Stetson within the greater community, but also in the United States. And we tend to forget that Stetson is a remarkable achievement of a university because, at its founding in 1883 as a simple academy, Henry DeLand was friends with some key people like John B. Stetson, the famous cowboy hat maker. And, he was connected with a lot of these big entrepreneurs, but also people like Andrew Carnegie, right? A big tycoon of his day in the late 18 and early 1900s. And so we get to see Stetson's connection to prominent history we didn't really think about or know about. We think, we're just a little tiny town in Central Florida, but we are not just, right? We are more than that because of our connections to political events, social events, historical events that helped us become the university we are. And so as we hunt ghosts and learn the history of these places, we're also telling Stetson's story over and over so that every iteration of students who come in, they know why we are truly significant. And I have to say, when Wendy Libby was president here, that was her sort of slogan, right? Be significant. And that was really important during my time here. And so I think a lot of times we forget through the day-to-day why this university is significant. And we do so, we tell that story by looking at its history. So, yeah.
It's a lot of recentering on a narrative that we're trying to reteach almost.
Yeah.
Plenty of people just come here and it's just get through your 4 years and leave undergrad.
Yeah, you pay too much money for that.
Yeah.
Someone does, whether it doesn't matter who.
Parent, student loans, someone. It's definitely too big of an investment to ignore all of the things that you're near. I'm a DeLand local. I moved here my sophomore year, and the first thing that I wanted to see was Casadega.
Yes.
Which, super interesting if anyone hasn't been.
Yeah.
Definitely where I wanted to go, and starting to look into DeLand just as a city and its deep roots.
Yeah.
DeLand has a really long way to go in the future for our social justice, our representation, but that history is so rich and fantastic. Just coming here and leaving you're missing out on so many things. I
try to encourage my students 2 things. 1, get involved, but 2, don't overcommit.
Yep.
You're still here to learn. You're still here to have an impactful experience that prepares you for your life after you graduate. But really, Stetson is, you get what you put into it, right? So you will get out of it all of the work you put into it, the lasting connections you make. I'm still friends with some of my classmates from, I graduated in 2013, 10 years ago this year. And so I'm still good friends with them. I still am connected in many ways to the groups I was a part of. And when I was at Stetson, I was an RA, and then I was a head RA when we had that position, and we were head RA over numerous buildings. I was in Alpha Xi Delta. I joined my last year though, so I wasn't a 4-year committer, but I joined my last year, but I would end up working for my headquarters. A lot of my career successes now I owe to the dedication not only of my faculty that I had, but also the university itself and what I put into it. So it's a really good combination of those things, using the resources at your disposal, but making sure you're putting yourself out there in ways you feel comfortable. So I'm not saying if you're introverted to go join the next
club.
Go join every club where you have to speak in front of a crowd. No, you should find the things that speak to you and that make you feel aligned and comfortable, but also set you up for success. Because here at Stetson, you, regardless of whether they're friends or club mates or classmates, you are networking 100% of the time you're here. And we talk about it in sociology and networks, social network analysis and stuff. But really, it doesn't matter how long you've known someone at Stetson, that's a connection you'll have for a lifetime. And because we're a small school, our alumni network is incredibly strong. And I still benefit from it today with people I know and connected with. And even with my sorority, there are many wonderful women who are much older than me who have offered me experiences and career growth that I was so grateful for, and I still am. And so I come back to Stetson, as an alumna for a lot of reasons, to be not only sociology faculty, part of Haunted Hatters, but also because I had such a rewarding experience here. And again, you get out of it what you put in. And when I was here at Stetson, a lot of people didn't really think about the importance of their faculty, but I actually structure my teaching with accessibility built in to accommodate a lot of different types of learning styles and flexibility of deadlines and things like that, because my faculty in sociology were much the same way. Every single one of them back in 2009 to 2013 were incredibly flexible. And at the time I was getting diagnosed with a chronic disease, actually 2. And I had no idea what was happening to my body. I was getting slowly disabled more and more and losing speed at which I moved. I was in chronic pain and I was falling behind, but I really could not afford, and I'm telling you, could not afford for a medical withdrawal or anything. So I just, had a conversation with them and they worked together to make it accessible. And I use that legacy in my class today. Now they've all retired. The ones I worked with a lot, they were impactful on my education. And that's what makes me want to dedicate a lot of my energy into creating a culture in my classroom and a structure of learning that is flexible so that everyone can have a low pressure learning environment and be able to enjoy the learning so that they absorb it and retain it more. And I'm honored to be back to do that work. So, yeah.
Well, I'm definitely glad that you're still here. Just
Thank you.
Even with all of the important things that you're teaching, the clubs that you're a part of. Super excited for that psychic fair.
Yes.
In the spring. That'll be fun. You mentioned being a psychic medium.
Yes.
How is that type of role outside of Stetson? What's like a day-to-day for you?
So I do have a website. I have a structured business. I've had it for a few years. I was a psychic medium before for about, actually since I graduated from Stetson. And I trained on and off, but I have a family who's very open to it. We went to psychics my whole life. My mother and grandmother would talk about my great grandmother deciding her monthly schedule by the moon's phases, right? So we have a very spiritual family, and and my day to day now is I have clients on days I'm not teaching. I run trainings, I run workshops, I talk about ethics heavily. In working with psychics and being a psychic, what are the ethics around those things? That's a big thing that I talk about and train about. And psychic mediumship, a lot of it for me was inspired more heavily to start a business because it aids a lot in people's grief. So much like a spiritual minister, support person in your life, I function under this idea of non-religious connection. So I don't subscribe to a religion myself, so I stay as neutral as possible to help as many people as I can, but I work as a grief support person. And I say that very strategically. I'm not a counselor. I was never certified or licensed. So my support comes from learning the ins and outs of helping families when their loved one passed in hospice. Also other trainings I've had through the years. I've been a first responder in another country before. So, just learning. I've done a lot of work with like suicide prevention and de-escalation. And so I bring a lot of that into this work to be an ethical, compassionate, and humane psychic so that my pricing is ethical and fair, so I'm compensated fairly, but also that the work that I do is with people who believe in connections with loved ones on the quote unquote other side. And so if you have that belief system, it may benefit people to see me because I believe in the work that I do. And they believe in the work that I do. So how is it any different than going to a spiritual leader in your community, right? So I help people connect with their loved ones as a way to say there is something after this physical realm and that they're still around. So I always tell my clients that your relationship with your loved one is not over. It's just changed. You can't touch them like you're used to, but you can feel them and know them and hear them in different ways. And so I don't also try to impose my beliefs on people. So very similarly, I don't work with a lot of skeptics because I find they're asking me to do a magical parlor trick and prove to them I'm legitimate. I don't do that. I find it disrespectful to my belief systems and trainings I've done, but also the work and grief support that I've done and the clients who seek me out. So I actually have it established as a business policy. If you openly state or act in ways that I have to prove something to you, I don't work with you. I want to make sure that this is a sacred space and it's respected, because if people come to you with proof to me that mediums are real, well, then you're just asking me to do magic for you and take away from the authenticity of my work. And if you are skeptical, that's great, but please do your own research first and understand a couple things. First, every psychic medium is different. They have different skills and different modalities. Some psychic mediums to connect with loved ones use photographs. Some do none of that. Some people need to be in person, some don't. Every human is different, therefore every skill set is different. Some, and it's very possible, many psychic mediums have bad days. If you happen to have a session that didn't go as well, they may have been having a bad day. It happens. And I always say to use caution watching those fancy TV shows, right? With famous mediums, because they only show you their good sessions. They don't show the outtakes and the bad ones. So I have many bad ones because I'm human too, right? If you're not feeling good, if you're just like as a teacher, if you're not feeling good, you're not teaching at 100%. You're not engaging 100%, right? It's the same thing, even with psychic work. So, but again, I never challenge people's belief systems, though. So I've had people come to me from all over the world with different religious belief systems, people who practice Islam, people who are Christian, Catholic, people who are Hindu and Buddhist, wonderful, beautiful religions all over the globe. But they come to me with putting that behind them and saying, I just need a little connection in a different way that's spiritual rather than religious, right? And so, and I'll talk about the difference in my spring class between spiritual and religious. But I do a lot of that work to help them. And again, I'm very big on ethics. I do a lot of work with sensitive populations like hospice, those who are dying, those who are ill, and a lot of that training comes into this work that I do as a medium, but also being humane in my teaching too. And you might find too, as you go through the world, that a lot of the things you do, you're going to learn lessons all the time that help you, and you can connect the pieces. So I may be a psychic medium, I may be faculty teaching, but they're all connected. Mm-hmm. So yeah.
That was super insightful and definitely very interesting and difficult for people to talk about. I like what you're saying about not wanting to work with skeptics or people who aren't open.
Yeah.
You can't always help people who don't want to be helped or who are looking to challenge a belief system because they're looking for something from you that you can't provide.
Right.
Definitely very insightful. For any of the people listening or watching, I would say reach out. If it's something that you're looking into, reach out.
Ask questions.
Yeah, of course.
Always.
It's something that's going to be difficult to navigate for everyone, especially with the grief support that you're doing. Yeah. Very admirable of you. I appreciate that. What else do you want people to know about you? Things that you're planning, things that you're doing currently, research, personal?
Yeah. Well, I'm finishing my PhD this spring.
Congratulations.
Thank you. So I will actually be Dr. Hartikka, hopefully by the end of spring term or into next fall. And I'm publishing, so I've got a couple publications out on educational policy. I publish sometimes in education. And I've also got a couple publications under review that are about aging, sociology of aging, and aging women and wisdom research. So sometimes I dive into wisdom studies, which is a very interesting work to get into. But my supervisor, my PhD, my doctoral chair, she is a leading scholar in wisdom work. So she inspired me in that way. So I like to connect a lot of those pieces. And I will eventually be putting a paper out on, connections with the paranormal, community building through that and stuff like that. But for the spring, I need to graduate myself. I'm finishing my doctorate at the University of Florida while I'm teaching here. And I have goals and aspirations beyond that. But first, graduate, just like any seniors listening, graduate. And I will be continuing with Haunted Hatters. We are always looking for members to join us, even if you just want to participate. But another thing I need to say is that, unfortunately, while I'm teaching at the university, students cannot hire me for mediumship sessions. I apologize. So conflict of interest. But also know that if students are interested in learning more about that world, I have so many book recommendations. I have wonderful connections in the psychic community that I could bridge over. And some of them you'll meet at the psychic fair in March.
Super exciting.
So you'll get to meet some of other psychics coming in. And I'm actually doing a couple fairs myself as a psychic, so stay tuned. But there's a lot of fun stuff happening. Yeah.
That was the handful of questions that I had.
Okay.
Anyone who's listening and watching, reach out. Soon to be Dr. Hartikka is fantastic and a great resource for a plethora of questions that all of you could have. So if you have anything that I didn't ask, I'm sure you do. Reach out. Where can we reach you?
So my office is, and very cool fact about it, my office is Davis 227, and it's actually registered as a safe place for queer and LGBTQ plus identifying students, and it's registered with DeLand Pride as a safe location. So you'll see a beautiful sticker on my door, and you can also email me at khartikka@stetson.edu. So first initial, full last name at Stetson. And I'm always available, so feel free to give a chat if you have questions, need resources, or want to learn more about my teaching and what's going to be offered. So I really hope to see more students who want to engage in the curious of society, and so join me on that journey as we go through the nitty-gritty details of our world. So even the spooky ones.
Yeah, those are the most fun.
I agree.
This was super fun. Thank you for coming out to speak with us. Thank you, What Radio, for setting up this podcast. This was fantastic.
Yeah.
Everyone reach out. Soon to be Dr. Hartikka is a fantastic resource and super fun to chat with. So I definitely recommend.
Thank you so much for having me.
Of course.